Namaste. Welcome back to the Nirvega Vidya channel. We continue our discussion for the Unit 6 of Anatomy and Physiology for the portion for NET preparation for yoga according to the June 2020 syllabus. If you've been following our previous videos on this Unit 6 for the discussion of human anatomy and physiology, so far we've discussed what is a cell, what are the different cell organelles, and how do these cell organelles function. We have understood how sophisticated the most fundamental unit of our entire body can be. So if you've understood how organelles function, if you understand that the mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell, the nucleus holds the genetic material of our cell, that the nucleus forms the ribosomes, that the ribosome knows that it has to move out of the nucleus and go to the endoplasmic reticulum, where it is again a new set of information from the ER is again transported to the Golgi body, and the Golgi body understands that the information needs to be coded further before it can be sent to other cells. All of these functions are highly specialized. But what is it that defines that the mitochondria will produce power? What defines that the ribosome will move out of the nucleus? These are specific instructions. Yes, and this is just happening in a simple cell that is present in your body. When we go on to study organ systems and different organs and tissues, we will understand how different cells in different tissues form a varied number of functions. So what is it that guides these cells to understand what they need to do? And that is where we talk about genes. That is why the genes are considered the book of life. They are like an instruction manual for us to understand why we are how we are and what is being done inside our body to maintain all of this that is us. So today we will be discussing about genes. When we talk about gene, it is the basic physical and functional unit of heredity. What is heredity? It is the traits, it is the behavior, it is the all the functions of the body and all the ways that we work that is inherited or that is given to us by our parents. So by our previous generation, it is passed on to them by their previous generation. So from generation to generation, certain traits, certain characteristics, certain functionings are passed on, which is the entire study of heredity. And a gene is what defines or what tells us how and what aspects of that heredity are being passed on. So what is a gene made up of? Gene is made of DNA. And what DNA is, we will understand in the next slide. But when we say that a gene guides these processes within our body, all these various processes from the smallest level of how a cell or a mitochondria knows that it is supposed to produce energy, to the level where we know that to gain energy we need to breathe in oxygen and then we need to let out carbon dioxide. From the smallest of processes to the largest of processes, these genes have instructions, and in scientific terms these instructions are called codes. Just like a computer has code to make you understand or that can help you to understand how the part works. Like if some of you are computer engineers, you know that if you expect the software to give you a certain output, you put something in input in a certain amount of in a certain type of code so that the output is given to you basis what you wanted it to do. So genes contain certain codes that help you to form information that is supposed to be given to different parts of the cells. So these informations are passed in the form of proteins, which is why we say that genes contain instructions to synthesize proteins, which are these messages that are supposed to be sent from one part of the cell to the other and from one cell to another. These proteins are what help you to perform all the functions within our body. From the time that we are a baby, knowing that the body has to grow and all the food that is being taken in is supposed to be consumed, and it is supposed to be stored and converted into certain elements in our body so that our bones become stronger, our height grows, all of these things. All of this is controlled by genes. So there are certain parts of the DNA which are coding. That is, they have a certain set of information and instructions to give. And then there are also non-coding sections of the DNA which have certain jobs. Uh, so far, the evidence shows that only 1% of our entire DNA that is present in every cell is actually what contains instructions for us to understand and to follow what functions we need to do in our body. But then 99% of it, 98 to 99% of it is non-coding sections. Earlier they were called junk DNA because it was understood that they do not have any role to play and the message they send is very haphazard and it is never used in the functioning of the body. But there is increasing evidence to show that these non-coding sections are what separate the coding sections from one another. So you may have heard a term sometimes called gene expression. Gene expression is when the gene gives the code to create the protein or synthesize the protein, and the protein does its work. So that way the gene expresses itself. So non-coding sections of the DNA may not have any job themselves, but they do help in deciding when a gene will express itself and when a gene will not express itself. And that is a very important function because uh, you need to understand. Say suppose you are for an example, you are a woman, but there are certain factors in you that you do not want to that you may not want expression of, like a very heavy beard or like any facial growth hair happening. So this is an aspect of gene expression and you do not want that happening in a woman, although it does happen, and that's when these are called as different disorders, genetic disorders in many cases. So these things are to be controlled. You need to control what gene expression shows itself. So this is where the aspect of gene expression will come in, and how non-coding sections form a very important role of controlling how a gene expresses itself. There are about 20,000 genes found in the human body so far, but the research on understanding the human genome is very much ongoing because the possibilities of what we can understand about ourselves from our genes is quite enormous. So coming to understand what is DNA. When we talk about DNA, it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So we will understand how the word deoxyribonucleic acid comes about. After the macronutrients, that is the carbohydrates, fats and proteins, nucleic acids, they form the fourth major macromolecule that is essential for all forms of life. So when we look at the DNA, the structure is a classic double helical structure. As you can see over here, this is a double helical structure. This is one helix that is like almost like a spring-like coiled structure, and this is the next helix, which is the second coiled structure. So if you look at this as a central axis, this is two helixes that are sort of coiled, intertwined into each other, and this is the signature shape of a DNA molecule. Now, where does the word deoxyribo come from? It comes from the sugar deoxyribose. deoxyribonucleic acid is the entire macromolecule. When we talk about macromolecule, there has to be a smaller molecule that forms it, and that smaller molecule that forms it is a nucleotide. This nucleotide again has 3 units. So when I say each unit, I mean each nucleotide consists of 3 parts. One is the sugar, that is the deoxyribose, one is the phosphate group, and one is a nitrogenous base. If you look at this structure over here, this is the sugar, this is the phosphate group. You see the phosphorus ion with 4 oxygen, which forms a phosphate, and this A, T, C and G. These are the nitrogenous bases: adenosine, thymine, guanine and cytosine. If you observe over here, you will see that cytosine will always combine with guanine and adenosine will always combine with thymine. That is how the structures of the bases are. We do not need to go into the detail of what the structure is. Just understand that it is a nitrogenous compound, that it has a nitrogen involved in it, and this is how the bonding occurs. So to simplify it, this is how it is shown. This is the phosphate group, okay, and this is the nitrogenous base, and this will be your sugar. So it forms almost like a ladder like structure where the nitrogenous bases are complementary and they form the rungs of the ladder, and this is the entire ladder that is formed. The 3' end, 5' end, you don't need to worry about that. That is going into more complex organic chemistry, which we don't need to bother ourselves with for the understanding for the net level. So when this ladder is sort of twisted around its axis, that is when we come up with the double helical structure of the DNA. So this is what a DNA molecule looks like. So usually when the DNA molecule, the protein synthesis has to start, the entire coiled structure, it uncoils, and when it uncoils, it comes back to the structure that is over here, that is a ladder, and then it opens up like a zipper almost, where the entire 2 sides, 2 rungs of the ladder just come apart, and then the coding side is where the code is then passed on to something known as the RNA, which we will understand in the next slide, and that is how the code gets sent to the RNA, and the RNA performs the job of forming the proteins which will pass the information to the rest of the cell. This is a very basic understanding of what the DNA molecule does. We will still further understand what the genes look like, because this is at an extremely microscopic level, and our gene structure is still a bit more complex. Moving on to understanding the second part that is important for our gene expression, and that is RNA, ribonucleic acid. So just like earlier, there was a sugar deoxyribose that gave it the name. In RNA, the sugar is ribose, and again, like a nucleic acid, ribonucleic acid. Therefore, over here also it is nucleotides which are the core unit, and each nucleotide contains a sugar, which is a ribose, again once more a phosphate group and a nitrogenous base. The place where again the difference between the RNA and DNA comes is that its 4 nitrogenous bases are adenosine, guanine, cytosine, and the 4th base is uracil. It's not thymine. Okay. So in again differentiating between DNA and RNA, the RNA is usually in a single-stranded non-helical structure. Here it is shown somewhat in a helical structure, but it is purely for representation. In most cases, RNA has a very haphazard coiled structure. And there are different forms of RNA because RNA has again different functions. The DNA may have one code, but the code is going to give out different functions. So the RNA has different functions for helping in the expression of genes. So RNA helps for coding, decoding, regulation and expression of genes. Under that, when we talk about mRNA, mRNA stands for messenger RNA, which is basically, as the name suggests, it is used to convey genetic information. tRNA stands for transfer RNA. It's used for transferring amino acids to the ribosomes for protein synthesis. So in the ribosomes, if you remember, ribosomes are responsible for protein synthesis. Where do these proteins come up from? Someone has to bring the amino acids, that is the uh, units of each protein. Proteins are formed from several amino acids. Just like complex sugars are formed from simple sugars, proteins are formed from amino acids. So the transfer RNA does the job of bringing the amino acids to the ribosomes. Where do the amino acids come from? We eat food, it gets digested, it gets broken down, it goes to different parts of the body, and when it has to enter the cell, it enters the cell through the transmembrane proteins, like we studied earlier with cell membrane transport. So from there, once it enters the cell, the transfer RNA brings the amino acid to the ribosomes for protein synthesis. Then we have rRNA, which is ribosomal RNA. Ribosomal RNA is present in the ribosome itself, and it helps, whichever amino acids are coming, it helps to link them and form a chain so that you get a protein out of it. And this protein is what is released out of the ribosomes, and it is basically information that can be then transported either to the Golgi body or to the other parts of cell to perform different functions. Okay, so this is a very basic understanding of what RNA is. Coming to understand now what are chromosomes. Many times when we talk about genetic material, we hear the word chromosomes. You hear that humans have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs of chromosomes. What are chromosomes? If you look at the picture here, this gives you a very good explanation of what the chromosome is. This is your ladder that I explained about. When the ladder coils around itself, this is the double helical structure, as you can see. And when this long line of DNA, it comes and wraps itself around this. As you can see here, these are 4 units. These units are called histone proteins. And actually this is a histone octamer. When I say octa, it means 8. So there are 8 units of histone proteins, 4 on top, 4 on the bottom. This is a 3D image, so you cannot see the 4 units at the bottom, but behind these 4 units there are 4 more units of histone proteins. And the DNA, so imagine the histone proteins like a cube, and the DNA coils itself around this histone protein. So one histone octamer is 8 units of histone proteins, 4 up, 4 down, and a coil of DNA around it. There, like that, the DNA wraps itself around more and more histone octamers, and these again like condense further, and this is called a nucleosome. This condensed structure is called a nucleosome, and several nucleosomes, when condensed further and further and further, like this structure that you can see in the extremely condensed form, they form chromosomes. So the chromosomes contain our genetic material in an extremely tight, coiled and completely compact formation. And now why is that? It's because if the genes were available and open all the time, the expression would happen all the time. But the information is guarded because certain functions only need to take place at a certain point of time. Hence, only when that information is needed, the entire structure opens up and the information is released. It is a matter of security. This is why the chromosome is so compact. What do we mean when we say that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes in the human cell? There are 22 pairs of autosomes and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. Sex chromosomes are also known as allosomes. In this, basically, when we say 23 pairs, there are total 46 in number. Every human child will receive 23 chromosomes from its father and 23 chromosomes from its mother, bringing it to a total of 46. That is how we inherit some aspects of our parents, some aspects of our father, and some aspects of our mother. But would you say that we are a carbon copy of our parents? No, we aren't. So what makes us unique is there are some aspects of the DNA that are completely unique to us. But when we talk about DNA testing and you want to find out like, oh, is this person like related to this person? What they test is the DNA, because if you have inherited the DNA, some parts of your DNA will match your ancestors. Some parts of your DNA will pass on to your children. So these parts are what are combined. So there is a certain percentage given to it. If these percentages match, then you can say that yes, both of these people belong to the same family. So that is how DNA testing and DNA matching works. Nobody in the world will have the same DNA. Every person has their own unique DNA. Even twins, identical twins, will not have the same DNA. Their physical appearance may be the same, but their temperament, their behavior, their way of thinking could be drastically different. So all of this is again guided by genes, and therefore every person has their own unique set of chromosomes. Okay, that is how gene expressions work. One thing to note here is that since RBCs in our body don't have nucleus, therefore they don't have chromosomes. Okay, so in general it is said that each human cell has chromosomes, but then obviously if the cell does not contain a nucleus, then it will not have chromosomes. The other thing to remember here is that other than the nucleus, the mitochondria is the only other cell organelle which contains its own set of DNA to have a certain set of information to guide its functioning. Okay, this brings us to a nice and succinct ending of understanding how genes and chromosomes work. I've tried to cover all the important points from the exam perspective and also giving you a brief idea of uh, understanding how fascinating genes and chromosomes can be. So, now to bring it all in together, our entire discussion of what is a cell, what are cell organelles, and how each cell organelle functions in its own manner. This is a simple slide where I just wanted to bring it all in together to explain to you about the concept of a cell. So, what if the cell were a factory? This could help you to remember different functions, because sometimes for people who are new to this topic, you can feel a bit confused about what name, what part was associated with what function. So if you can just remember this like pictorially, the nucleus, which is the control center of the cell, which is like the brain of the cell. Then over here you will have the nucleolus from where the ribosomes arise. From the ribosomes come out of the nucleus through the nuclear pores, and they can attach themselves to the outer walls of these structures known as the endoplasmic reticulum. What are the endoplasmic reticulums doing? The ribosomes are attached here. If you remember the transfer RNA, it is bringing all the proteins that enter the cell through the cell membrane, it brings it here, and in the ribosomes through the ribosomal RNA, proteins are being formed, and these proteins are little packets of information that are to be sent for further packaging. So from here, from these ribosomes, from this endoplasmic reticulum, a small sac-like structure separates itself and moves to the next packaging unit, which is the Golgi apparatus or the Golgi body. Transport vehicles are basically the vesicles. The vesicles come and fuse into the Golgi body. They release the packet of information, that is the proteins. They get more coded over here, more transformed, and then again they leave as a vesicle to move to the other part of the cell. Then coming to the peroxisomes, we haven't covered these in details, but just remember that they are like a recycling center. Their function is not completely similar to the lysosome, but they also have an aspect of removing unwanted materials from the cytoplasm. Coming to the lysosome, the waste disposal or the waste treatment center for the cell, taking up damaged organelles, um, worn out parts, taking up unwanted materials from the cytoplasm, consuming foreign cells or materials that may have entered the cell. All of this is the job of the lysosome. Now, whatever it decomposes, whatever components are formed, which need to exit the cell because it cannot be completely digested within the cell itself. So, they will again be formed into vesicles, they will be taken to the plasma membrane, and from the plasma membrane they will be thrown out through something like exocytosis, or they may move out through passive cell membrane transport. And all of this is supported by the cytoskeleton, which is like a meshwork of microtubules and microfilaments along with the cell membrane that almost form like a building of the entire factory to ensure that different organelles are arranged at different levels. And what is powering all of these functions is the mitochondria. So I hope that this gives you a good understanding of how the cell functions and forms a strong foundation for understanding how our body works. In the forthcoming videos, we will be discussing in detail about different types of tissues that are formed when cells come together, and then how these tissues go on to form organs and organ systems. Stay tuned, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any doubts, feel free to drop a comment and we will respond to it as soon as we can. Thank you.